Welcome to Unmasking Social, where we talk about building real friendships and meaningful connections without masking who we truly are. I'm your host, Sharon Baum, a speech and language pathologist with an expertise in social thinking and how it relates to autism and ADHD, specifically with our teens and tweens. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Unmasking Social. In a technical glitch, Jill and I had recorded this episode, right? And then it fell into thin air, vanished. So for all you techies out there, for all those listening, just make sure that you don't accidentally mute the button on your computer because that's going to cause some serious problems, even on these tech platforms. But Jill Bober, so I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you for bearing with me and being patient with my idiosyncrasies. Jill, as a SEIT for many years, special education itinerant teacher for those who don't know. Jill, can you walk us down your path in terms of how you went from being this passionate SEIT to now being this parent coach who helps families all across the board in
Sure.
New York City?
I like to think that it started from the beginning, my early years of life. My parents sent me to a school where I had a lot of children in my classes with unique learning needs and different abilities. And this framed how I would interact with people for the remainder of my current life. I really felt like nobody was different than me. And because of this approach to living, I decided to follow my passion for helping others, which brought me to New York. I pursued a dual master's in early childhood and special ed. And during that time, I taught in a 2-year-old classroom. I taught kindergarten for 2 years. And when I finished graduate school at Bank Street, which gave me a wonderful education, I decided that I was going to try out a different path, whether that be either a special ed teacher or a kindergarten teacher for a longer time. And I decided I wanted to try. And I stepped into a 12 to 1 to 2 setting, which was my first job out of grad school, where I had many students of varying abilities. And I was able to support them across all domains. And then I transitioned into SEIT, where I had a wonderful mentor who taught me all about everything related to social emotional challenges, regulation, how to communicate effectively with related service providers, how to support parents. We met through many of those things, but really I became very passionate about going to different schools, helping many individual children and their families. And I did see it work for 7 years. And after working in many schools a day, I decided to switch over to head teaching kindergarten, which I'm doing now. So I do that during the day with my wonderful co-teacher. And in the afternoons, I do one-to-one support Monday through Friday with children.
Not exhausting at all, right?
It's great. And in the evenings, I try to support parents through my business, Coachable Change LLC.
Good plug. What parents? So it's interesting because we're living in a funny world, 2026. Everybody's in a fast-paced environment. And here you come in bulldozing. No, I'm just kidding. Bulldozing what feels like probably to some families is kind of writing what their life is like with them collaboratively because they're seeking out your help. Where have we gone so wrong? Because I know you and I are not parents yet, and one day we will be soon.
God willing.
And we come in and I know you had mentioned something about parents viewing you as not a parent. So like, what do you know? Right. And so it's interesting. So you come in there and you're able to coach them on all of these things that maybe they're unaware of that are automatic to us. Right. And so what's going on? Why does every other person need a parent coach these days?
I see a lot of challenges across the board. I think some environmental factors and distractions like screen time or screen addiction, which
Right.
all of us have, can contribute to challenges, especially when you take your child's iPad away or you set limits. And a big piece of the company that I own is helping parents to set these limits. I was raised in a love and limit setting household, and a lot of the work that I do is teaching parents how to set limits, follow through, and create boundaries in the home. And it's very challenging. And I see a lot of children running the households. And what I'm trying to do is step in, control the peace a bit. And I do this by offering play skill support. I do this by playing games for emotional regulation, doing art activities, doing sensory motor and different learning opportunities. And these children are learning skills both from me and the parents when they follow through.
Well, yeah, follow through is such a big thing. I just find it in my field as well, right? And I feel like sometimes you and I are both very passionate people, and sometimes, it's really hard to get the follow through, and we feel like we're kind of repeating, right? Like, and are there any tips that you have for that part? Because I know in working with the neurodivergent teens and tweens myself and the children, and I know it starts young, like, are there any specific language that you use to help with this? Because, it just can be tricky.
I use a lot of first then cues. I break down tasks as easily as possible, achievable tasks for each child and parent. So that might look like first you put this on, like a pair of socks, and then you put shoes on, and that task is accomplished. And by making social stories or routines, I'm
Love the
inviting
stories.
the child to be part of it. That might be drawing a bed where they get out of their bed and set their bed and then get dressed in the morning. And when you allow the child to be part of a routine or changes, even these small changes that add up to reframe how your whole household runs in a different or more smooth way, which is the goal, then some of these things become automatic. So by reviewing routines and actually following through with them the best we can. I know every day is different, things come up. This one is visiting, this one is on vacation, this one is traveling. That often brings a whole added level of challenge for the child.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think also a big part of a challenge in the home is when people are raising children differently. So when
Uh,
there's a disconnect, which I didn't mention before, between the language that one parent is using or a caregiver or grandparent, whoever is helping to raise the children or teachers, when the language and strategies being taught are inconsistent, then it's so confusing for the children, both neurodiverse and neurotypical, to understand who to listen to, who
right. Who's in
to
charge?
not necessarily who's in charge, but whose message should be carried over. And
Yeah.
for me, I'm often giving scripts. I'm sitting across the table from parents. They're sharing with me their most challenging moments. They're acting it out. They're showing me a video of a scenario, and I'm giving them a step by step monologue of what to share with their child and instructions. And sometimes I'm coming back week after week, reinforcing skills that take time to learn. It's not automatic. As a grown up, I'm learning skills every day
Right.
that I have to practice over and over again.
Yep.
And I had to do that as a child. Children learn from their models, and their models are all over, especially in New York City. You're learning from this teacher, you're learning from this person, you're learning
From
from
the
things
train.
in your environment. And we need to try to implement and suggest as much moral values into our children. And that can be very challenging, especially with so many factors
Right.
all around
And
us.
that one of the factors being that with autism and ADHD on the rise, you having your own personal experience as being neurodivergent, specifically diagnosed with ADHD, is there something that parents need to know specifically with that subgroup of people, of children? Do you find that's different, or do you find like similar kinds of methodology work for?
I think that in order to understand your child the best, having as much information is the most helpful. I can speak to my own experience. When I was younger, I had learning disabilities. I had an IEP. I was in resource room. I had professionals who gave me every tool I needed in order to be
Wow,
successful.
that's amazing.
And my parents made it such an important mission to teach me how to advocate for myself from watching them advocate for me. And because of that, I now help parents advocate for their children. which is a big passion of mine. And most recently, I decided to advocate for myself in learning more about my own learning needs, my own organizational needs and challenges as an
Okay.
adult. And I did have a neuropsych done recently. And it really was eye opening for me to have pen to paper understanding of the way that I learn, the way I organize, the way that I criticize myself, the way that I praise myself, the way that I run my day to day life, how I handle my regulation, how I become dysregulated and have coping skills that I'm teaching children and learning myself every day. So through this diagnosis, I learned a lot about myself, which has just been so helpful to have transparent conversations with other adults who have had a later in life diagnosis and with parents when they're feeling completely overwhelmed by understanding their children's documentation. I am noticing a lot of executive functioning challenges coming up, self regulation challenges where parents really don't even understand what that language is. And for me to be able to share personal anecdotes from my own upbringing or current life, it's just an easy way for parents to relate and say, oh, that's something my child does. What's something that you suggest that we do at home? A concrete
Right.
suggestion that we can put into place to help our child. I also believe that, and we spoke about this, the stigma of asking for help is something that when I was younger
Yeah.
or in the last few years, I've seen less of, maybe, which I'm happy about,
Yeah.
where parents are feeling more and more comfortable to ask for help. And I just appreciate that so much when I see a parent ask for help for their child, when there's two sides of the coin. There's denial, which I'm sure you've seen
Yeah.
plenty of, and it's hard to come to terms with a diagnosis for your child, which I sympathize with. But there's people, myself included, who want to sit across from you, hold your hand while guiding you through this process and helping you understand all of the wonderful things your child can do and with the right support will be able to do.
Yeah, well said. It's interesting because you mentioned the denial piece, right? Or the asking for help piece. And as a parent, I know just in working with parents like you for so many years, and especially in the specialized program I worked in with constant parent trainings, sometimes it's really hard to come to terms with a certain diagnosis that a child may have, or the fact that you as a parent, even though you know your child best, you still can use some support. I mean, life is hard. I mean, you have other kids, even if this is your only kid, I mean, you have a life outside of the child. And so sometimes, I mean, probably everyone could use some support, right? Do you find that many parents still feel ashamed? If so, like, is there something that you've done to make them feel more comfortable? Because they seem to feel pretty comfortable with you. So what's the magic?
I'm not sure there's any specific magic. I think there's an approach, which I always try to start with, which is just to sit and give them an opportunity to speak first before I go in and start suggesting all these things. I also do my best to make sure that my tone stays consistent because if I raise it, and I see this in classrooms that I stop into or in homes or on the playground, that an elevated voice can often be challenging for a child to hear. This might set them off. This might increase behaviors, especially if there's big feelings in the moment. If they're having a meltdown and you start to yell, they become dysregulated. And I talk to parents a lot about co regulation, the challenges of co regulating. It's hard for me, definitely, a lot of the time. It's something I'm working on. I always say teaching is a journey.
Yeah,
Teaching is learning, learning is
of course.
teaching. It's a lifelong journey that we're all on. But I think the approach that I maintain is just let's sit down together. You can cry to me, bring tissues. I understand. I have been on the receiving end of tough information or information that is surprising. I had challenges. I found being in school to be very hard for me. I really needed the tools, graphic organizers,
Yeah.
multi step directions explained to me, extra time. All of these things led to me being the educator that I am today, it's really allowed me to give each child their individual attention and try to help parents make sure that their child has their needs met.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it is interesting because with parents, well, you're displaying, it seems like, empathy. It seems like you're displaying a lot of empathy towards the individuals, bringing in your own experience. Again, when you've walked the walk and you've been through it, people can feel that connection a little bit greater. It doesn't mean that if you're a parent coach or if you're working in the education sphere, you have to have experienced the specific ADHD or ADHD or whatever it may be. But it does kind of lend a hand to the understanding and the validation and the empathy. And what better thing can a parent hear than like I struggle too, right? I also had this kind of situation happening to me because some of these parents isolate themselves. I also noticed, whereas some parents, I've had people on this podcast where they felt so alone because of the situation they were dealing with that they actually found their tribe, because we speak a lot about finding your tribe on this podcast, with each other. And then they started this whole huge college connection group supporting individuals with autism navigate college. But until they found each other, they really felt truly alone.
And that's a piece that I'm trying to avoid. Of course, it's something I hear a lot, that parents are hesitant to ask for help. Parents don't want to share with other parents. Parents don't want to be vulnerable. And I think, as I've mentioned to you many times, as a teacher, I model vulnerability in front of my students, and this helps to create a bond. And I think that obviously in the classroom, it's so important to have safety and community. And that's something we really emphasize in my class. And when you step into a home of chaos where there's yelling, dysregulation, for me, sometimes that happens. I go into a home and I have to take like a step back
Yeah.
and say, okay, this is what is happening here.
Hmm.
And like, what can I do first in order to bring everything down to this level? Because if I can't work
Right.
effectively in this environment, then how can I help this family?
Right. And even more so, how is this child doing, right? If they're in this chaos, to no fault of anybody other than the fact that life is chaotic and crazy. And maybe the parents could use a little more support. But how is a child functioning daily with this constantly going on? Because I can tell you, I've been in overstimulating environments and sometimes I've been in it for too long. And even if I spend more time in it, I'd never habituated to it. It's still just as annoying to have the loud sounds, noises come at you. It's still as frustrating to have just constant movement in and out, especially when you're trying to do your job. So I I don't think you habituate to that. I could be wrong scientifically, but it's very hard to habituate to a level of overstimulation and chaos.
I think that I do my best to come in, create a safe space wherever I am. That might be outside, it might be in a grocery store where I'm teaching different skills about transitioning.
Hmm.
And you need to play to the environmental factors around you. And that can be very challenging. And many siblings, different people.
New York City, the concrete jungle.
There's always so many factors that play into everything, and no session looks the same, no day looks the
Right.
same. And being flexible, pivoting, it's constant.
Right. And you mentioned before about getting your ADHD diagnosis. You didn't mention that it was a birthday gift to yourself. So happy
Yes.
belated birthday on receiving the
Thank you.
diagnosis. And it's interesting because I know people have all different kinds of responses to later diagnoses. People on this podcast have received later diagnoses in various things. And to some, they were elated, they were relieved. They felt kind of like, okay, now I understand myself better. Others felt kind of like, wait, all these years I didn't know what was going on with me. Like, couldn't someone have just told me? Like, why did I have to wait this long? So, what was your reaction to that? And can you speak also more about this piece, which I think so many of my listeners have trouble with, that seems to tie into ADHD, which is you mentioned the critical piece where you become really critical on yourself, the negative self-talk that comes in that overlaps with the ADHD, as well as the comparison, which is also part of the negativity.
Sure.
That's a lot.
It's fine. Let me break each
Let's
thing
break
down.
it step. Yeah, and
Yes.
if you forget a step, I'll try to remember,
Yeah,
but
please
I'm also
remind
out of
me.
focus a bit. So yeah, I could try.
When I received my diagnosis, funny enough, before receiving it, there's all these steps. There's a lot of reflection. You think about your childhood, you think about different activities, how you go through the
Mm,
day. Are you late? Are you timely? What helps you stay organized? So there's a lot of self-reflection, which as an avoider, that was a little bit challenging for me.
As an avoider, so when you say avoider, 'cause I know people
Sometimes,
say
sure. As someone who sometimes tries to avoid reality so that I can see the brightness in it, this is
okay.
something that I'm working on.
Well,
And through my,
I'm so sorry because I love this topic of avoidance and all these things that come up
yes,
in psychology, but when you say avoidance, do you mean avoiding a certain task or avoiding
I
thinking
am a
about
task avoider,
okay,
a chronic task avoider, which is emerging. My understanding of my task avoidance
in
is
the emerging developing phase?
not only that, but with the diagnosis, now I've learned strategies to support the task avoidance. But as someone who is a sweeper of negative things to try to reframe them into positive, that part was challenging for me.
Okay, so the part of where you have because you're so used to, like you said, you don't want to confront the reality, even if it's brutal, right? And so basically, you want to spin something that could be difficult, challenging, and awfully maybe negative just by objectivity around you, right? Into something that, well, there's some positive there, right? Does that apply? Because I know we spoke about this, and both of us are warm, empathetic people, right? And we both
We
work
try.
with us, right? I know how you work, and I know my approach, and I know that we try to be there for the children as much as we can, but we also know that there's a boundary, like you mentioned, limits, boundaries. And I feel like we've overcorrected in a way in our society where we are too afraid to say anything that could be offensive because it's not affirming, right? Now, so tell me a little bit more about how that correlates with what you think, maybe, or how you approach the
Sure.
families.
As we have spoken about, notice so many parents going for the best friend approach rather than the saying no approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's such a big hope that you're going to be your child's best friend, and that if you say no, they're not going to love you. And I think that this is actually a detrimental upbringing or way to raise your children because they're going to have a harsh reality when people say no to them. And I talk about this a lot with parents, how they're giving so many choices, and this can be overwhelming. And it's raising children who feel entitled to whatever they want in that exact moment. I see it quite often where the option that's given does not align with what they wanted. And then this brings on a breakdown or challenging feelings. And when parents don't say no or don't set limits, and the limit needs to be set with safety in mind, of course, with safety as
So
the
you just
top
want,
priority.
yeah,
But that's very hard for parents, which I understand because saying yes oftentimes is easier, gets rid of the crying.
in the short term.
In the
Yeah,
short
yeah,
term, it solves the
right,
problem,
right.
but in the long term, it leads to learned behavior and then chaos.
Yeah, I mean, when things are moving a mile a minute, especially in our technology-driven world and social media and everything else, I mean, probably in the moment, it's so much easier. The path of least resistance, as they say, is to just give in, right? Because ultimately, if you don't give in, you're going to go spend a lot more time in that moment trying to calm this kid down while maybe another child's flying off the handles, and then you're trying to take a shower and you're trying to prep for tomorrow, and I don't know, there's just so many other, like, things going on, and so, I mean, in the moment, right, it feels like it could be good, but it sounds like in the long term, you have to practice using the no, the power of no probably is just as equally powerful, if not more, as the power of yes. I think I read a book
Speaking
of
of
yes.
power of yes, I actually love power of as an expression. So in
Ah,
my class, for example, there is a song which I reinforce. So maybe someone would say, I don't know how to read yet. And I emphasize the word yet. So in my day to day life, I try to emphasize the yet. So I might not have been able to do this yet, but I'm
right.
working towards it. And I think by using that language in your home, it's a motivator. People I've shared this with who are much older, they maybe have been feeling down about something. Maybe they're not allowed or able to do something yet, but the yet is a goal to reach for.
I think that's phenomenal and so inspirational just even for me. Like, I think that sometimes convince myself as someone who also sometimes, sorry for being very open and vulnerable on this podcast episode, but
What's the
yeah,
point?
that's a point, right? But I'm not always. But basically, I find myself tackling with negative thought cycles. I find myself, I'm sure many listeners can
Negative self-talk?
yeah, and I'm sure many listeners have this difficulty, especially in this comparison culture and society where I feel like people live their entire lives like just looking at social media for other people. And I found myself falling into that trap too. And I find myself daily having to battle with that because society makes it sometimes really difficult to feel like, wait, I want to live just for myself. I want to make myself happy. Right. And so I think there's some beauty in that, in the power of yet, meaning like, let
It's a
me
growth mindset.
yeah, like, meaning I don't have this yet, or I'm not doing this yet. And now I'm playing on my psychology, years of therapy. And at the same time, I could still be in this moment, right?
Yes, I think it's so important. And we were talking earlier about praise and how making sure that children are doing things for themselves and not for others in that regard. So I try to make sure when I'm finishing a session with families, I praise them, even if it's for something small that they've accomplished, and say, especially to a child, look what you did. Aren't you so proud of yourself? And not so much emphasis on your grown up is going to be so proud of you. I'm going to be so proud of you. Will I say as a follow up to them being proud of themselves? I'm so proud of you. I'm so excited. I'm trying my absolute hardest to move away from I'm so proud of you
Right.
to do specific praise. And I try to model
Yeah.
this with parents where I just say, try to emphasize something small
Hmm.
that you notice because these small things lead to gradually larger things and habits that help your life become easier.
Yeah, it always starts out small. And I think that a lot of praise is just like, oh, good job, right? And I think there's so much more to that, right? Wow, look at the way that you collaborated with somebody. Or look at how kind you were. I think on one of my podcasts, a neuropsych spoke about neuropsych from Dubai actually spoke about how we overlook even just someone being kind. You were kind to that other kid. Like that is a strength. That is beautiful. That is building upon something that maybe in the future, your kindness is going to lead to you being someone who's giving in charities or, generous in other ways. But yeah, a lot of times the feedback is not specific. So I find that, especially with individuals with ADHD, I know that the instant gratification is key, right? So we're not going to save the praise for like a day later, right? That will
I think specific praise in the moment is wonderful. I try I'll give you an example. I work with a lot of children on reading and math and using manipulatives, graphic organizers, different things
Mhm.
so that they feel successful. That might look like me showing four different coins and then noticing that it's a dime, something very small, that type of thing. And at the end, saying, wow, you noticed right away what a dime looked like. I played that song. I heard you sing it back to me and this is what
Mm.
helped you, the strategy that I taught you. And now you're using this every day because you really
Wow.
played to the child's strengths. If the child likes music,
Yeah.
you play a song that they can remember,
Mhm.
sing it, sing it, sing it. And then now they have this information. As a child, when I heard a song and saw a picture, I was able to memorize it. And this is how I learned and how I was successful in school because I learned from a song or playback.
Full circle moment here, right? Full
Yes.
circle. But so with these individuals that you're working with and their families, I suspect that at times, right, you may not see eye to eye with the parent, right? And without getting into too many graphic details of your journeys into all these homes, I mean, it doesn't get too graphic, but is there anything that sticks out to you in terms of, just getting the parent aligned? How do you get the parent aligned? Because you have certain ideas, they have certain ideas. At what point is it their value? At what point is it your professional intuition and guide beyond values, right? Like, how do you get on the same page?
Sure. So I always step in and say, I don't know everything. I am not perfect. No one's perfect. We all know this and try to lighten everything up.
Mm-hmm.
I think humor and lighthearted conversation at
It's a
the
big one.
beginning
Mm-hmm.
leads to more vulnerability and openness. And I try to start off like that. Also, even before I start working with families, I often ask them to share their parenting style with me so that any suggestion I might give aligns with their values. I'm not going to suggest something that goes against how they parent. Also, something that I've learned a lot about in my few years doing this is culturally to understand how everyone parents is not the same. So I've had to do a lot of research and learn from different cultures how parenting and discipline and behavior management differs and adjust my own suggestions to make sure that it fits in with the family.
Yeah, I mean, cultural awareness is key in this kind of situation because you're really going in, and not just with the kid, but you're going in it with the parent, with the family dynamic, which also is related to specific cultures, and then the norms of New York City, which are just completely different from the rest of the country. I mean, right? And worlds, right? I mean, New York City is a special, special place. And so, in that regard, I think everybody should understand, right, with parent coaching that it's not about changing the values or how someone parents. And so if a parent is on the fence about whether to seek out parent coaching or not because they're worried that you're not going to want to approach the child with the same way of guidance in terms of living, that's not what you're trying to do, right? It sounds like as parent coaches, you're trying to support the parent to support the child in
It's
areas
a
that they're struggling.
collaborative approach. So, yes, I think your understanding
I think
is
it's a collaborative approach, right?
yes.
Yeah.
So, a lot of what I do is explain to parents what outside individuals can do in order to support them and their child. So, that might look like OT, PT, speech, counseling, a sensory gym, therapy of some sort. And by sharing personal experiences, oftentimes, or I do my absolute best to destigmatize asking for help because it's okay to ask for help. And I wish more people would ask for help because I see children suffering
It's
when they are displaying behavior sometimes. I often share with others in this field behavior is a cry out for some sort of need not being met.
absolutely.
In order to get to the bottom of it, there's roots and then the tree. So you
Mhm.
have to figure out the roots, what's stemming
Yeah.
from the roots. And sometimes that requires support and that support looks different for everybody.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because on this podcast, we speak a lot about that because I've been trying to really get to the root of the sensory regulation piece and the behaviors that we speak about. And back in the day, and again, we're close in age, I'm a bit older, but it's okay. I have a few years on you. But back in the day, I just remember that behaviors were looked at as like, okay, you just are having a bad behavior and you're going to get like, I think in discipline, or there was a quote on the report cards back in the day where you would get like a check minus or a check plus or a check. And I think one time I may have done a check minus, but usually I was obedient. But the point is that discipline, right? Like also involves a layer of looking at the behavior, but in a different kind of way than they looked at it, in terms of you are, trying to hurt somebody, you are trying to do this. It seems to usually be rooted, and correct me if I'm wrong, in more of the dysregulation piece, a cry out for help, a cry using, instead of using your words directly, right? Doing a behavior to get someone's attention, perhaps, so that you can feel a little bit better.
I see a lot, and there's a lot in schools where there's a behavior plan. So, a plan that a team of people comes up with in order to support a child. A lot of times I see children crying out for help if they're lacking the language, which can be very frustrating,
Yeah,
which we
of course.
understand, lacking the tools for emotional regulation. And as a combination of those, not being able to express what they need in that moment to help them. So, as a teacher who is very active, I am a mover. I try to integrate a lot of movement in my own classroom and in my sessions because,
And in your own life, right?
yes, you have to make it work.
Well, actually, for ADHD, sorry to go off topic for a moment, but movement is a very important key. And I know I had a friend who was a big runner, and actually, because I was a runner first, and I remember that he asked, he was a cyclist too. And between cycling, running, and all these activities, the movement really supported his ADHD in a way where his ADHD, instead of being severe, was more mild to moderate.
So, there's ways to manage. Of course, people do different things. For me, I have many different strategies. A big piece in my diagnosis was me trying to understand what I needed to do because I woke up in the morning dysregulated
Yeah.
already. And at night, I was going to bed making lists. And I would wake up in the middle of the night and make a list of things I needed to accomplish the next day. And this cycle of moving and moving and moving and shaking just was not healthy for me. And with my diagnosis, I'll tell you a joke in sorts. So after going through all of the checklists, I went through the categories. In myself, I was curious to look at the graphs and all of that to see which areas were highest. One of them that I found the most interesting was in negative self talk or self esteem. And in, as we were talking about comparison,
Proof of
I,
joy.
yes,
Yeah. Feels every happy moment. Yeah.
I do my absolute best not to compare children, not to compare myself to others, because you really only see one side. So I see children only at school, or I see children only in their home. And this is like a snapshot
Yeah.
and not the whole picture. And when I received all of my documentation, I finally had a whole picture of me. And the biggest joke for me when I received the percentage of each domains, hyperactivity, all of those, I was told you have 99, you're in the 99 percentile
99 percentile means
out of 100.
you were close to 100%. It was that
Yes.
clear. It was that apparent.
And I said, well, where was my 1% missing? This is like my silly negative self talk. What
Yeah.
area am I lacking in that I didn't get the
Oh, that's
100%?
funny. Oh, you
But
lacked in something that didn't contribute to your
I wasn't
ADHD.
so impulsive, but almost so impulsive.
Mm. Oh, that
Uh,
was the area that
no,
you
I'm
oh,
joking.
okay, okay,
I won't get into the,
okay. Alright.
details,
Yeah.
but it's I think having a deeper understanding of me is so beneficial
Mm.
when I sit down with families who are describing their children, and I say, "Yeah, I have that same challenge, and here's some things I do that you can implement, and this might be a total game changer for your child."
Well, speaking of those strategies that you implement for yourself, but then also use with your individuals that you work with and the parents, what are some of those strategies or what are some favorites that you feel like really help you, but also help your students that you
I'm
work
going
with?
to open my trusty notebook
Well, you still making
because
those lists, still have those lists in there.
I do have lists, but it's only because I want to make sure that I accomplish everything.
Mm.
And something that I am improving is putting it away and saving it for the next day. Where in the past, I was so hyper focused on accomplishing every single thing and what I had to do next, and what's next, and what's next. And now, by learning these coping skills or organizational skills or putting something away and returning to it, and understanding that that's okay, that you don't need to do 100% of everything.
Mhm.
I try to do like favorite 5 per day where I need to accomplish 5 things that are
Oh,
top priority,
yeah.
and then my sub priorities.
And then if you don't get to those, you don't have to feel bad.
Yes, I try to reframe it at the end of the day to praise myself, even for small accomplishments, as I do with children, and specific praise.
Yeah.
So,
So this is actually great for anybody listening or even watching. This is something that you come back to. So, for example, for this podcast episode, you didn't have your book in front of you the whole time, right? But one of the strategies that you use is that instead of relying on this the whole time, right, you want to save it, come back to it because you know that this specific part is going to be a little bit more challenging in terms of the step by step. So, you broke it down step by step.
not only did I break it down step by step, I want to explain it with such description to
Got it.
make sure everyone understands it.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
both for me and
Right.
the listeners.
Okay, so it's for all, but this is a great strategy, which is that you don't have to eliminate something that has been supportive for you, right? But you can just tweak it a bit, pivot, and make it supportive and not something that you're relying on, right?
Sure.
Amen. Okay, so let's get through the steps. So these are steps that you use with the families, with the parents, and the children, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I embed this into my sessions. I embed this strategy into classroom, and I suggest this to parents as a way for them to have a deeper understanding. So one strategy I use is called ACT. So A stands for acknowledge the feeling or need. So an example of that might sound like, oh, you're feeling so angry, you wish you could do this. And then you, as a parent or practitioner, might model this like, so angry and try to relate to the child. And then you communicate the limit. So, say, for example, the child is hitting you or being physical with your body or with another friend's body. You communicate the limit, which might sound like we can't throw or this is not an option in my classroom. This is not an option in our home. This is not how materials are used here, that type of thing, but in the same conversational tone without changing, because then this could increase the dysregulation. And the child at this time is already showing feelings. So that feeling might be sadness, disappointment, any of the feelings. And you are communicating a limit in this moment because what they're doing is either unsafe sometimes or does not align with the values of your home or classroom or safety within any community or playground.
Yeah.
So,
But so cool question. Sorry to interrupt you. Also, part of I know all of this is reducing interruptions, but matching the tone, right? So, you want to match the tone to go to the level that they're at, rather than you going and escalating it, and then before you know it, that individual is also escalating, and then you're dysregulated together, right? And
yes,
separate from each other instead of co-regulated. Now, what if the individual's screaming, right? Like, are you trying to match their screaming tone? I know this is a silly question.
don't choose to go that route.
Okay.
Times I'm a dramatic practitioner,
And
a
what?
queen in life.
Oh, Jill, no, you're not.
I'm a queen in life, but self aware.
Self-aware dramatic, okay.
Often find that I'm trying to bring it down. So by labeling or helping the child to label, I'm trying to make sure that they can move on in a safe way. And I always set a limit with safety as the forefront,
Yeah,
just because that's what it needs to be. If you're in public, especially, you
yeah,
have to be self aware.
of
We
course.
talk a lot about
The body awareness for
body
sure, yeah.
awareness. Yeah. Awareness of your body in space, in a park, outside, on the street.
At the park specifically, though, like, and I'm pointing there just because my window's here in that way Central Park, but I'm just thinking about all the things I've seen there, and you mentioned body awareness, and I'm looking, like I said, the bodies are in different shapes, contorted all sorts of ways, the scooter's meeting the child's head first on the ground, another child's, like, bumping heads with another one, and it seems like, I don't know, like, it's almost like people just have no, I guess, concept of their body.
I think that's something everyone works on. It's an emerging skill for many people. I think a lot of people are distracted by societal things like buses or their phone and don't pay attention. Whereas children, it needs to be something that is taught. And sometimes you might need occupational therapy where
Right.
someone would be able to work on a specific goal to address your body awareness.
Right. Well, speaking of goals, I don't want to go too much on a tangent, but I know that we've discussed this in the past as two people who collaborate sometimes from time to time, but goals sometimes are written in a way that you want to follow, right? As an educator, as a speech pathologist, as whoever you may be servicing the child. But you also mentioned that part of the coaching with the parent is also reviewing those goals. Can you
Yeah,
talk more about that?
sure. So when I started parent coaching as a company and an idea, it branched out into many different things, which is great because it has allowed me to help people with many different things. So, whereas I might have worked with nannies at a playground, helping with transitioning home or different skills that they needed support with, sometimes I go into the home and just model play skills where we're playing games, figuring out how to win or lose in a way that's polite or a gracious winner, as we call it.
It's sportsmanship.
Yes, I refer to it as gracious winner.
Yeah.
As a sore loser grown up and very competitive individual, it's fun for me to try to model these skills
Hmm.
for children. And
And think about it for yourself,
yeah,
right?
so
Hmm.
I'm learning and modeling, and sometimes I will even dramatically toss a piece in the air out of frustration just to model what
It
an
looks.
inappropriate
Yeah.
reaction would be.
Yeah.
And then they're learning from this. And I often find using humor and drama is relatable for
It's
children.
interesting that you mentioned that because just going back to neurodivergence, even though all of these skills are applicable to neurotypical individuals, everybody could use support. All of our brains are different at the end of the day, neurodiversity, right? The drama piece I know that I used a lot with when I was working with individuals with autism, specifically with social communication.
Mhm.
And it really worked wonders. Just the role playing, the different roles they could have, the way they would shift roles and then come back to the other one, the way that they would get into character, but have to adjust all the necessary social prompts. So it's fascinating how you use drama as well and humor. I think humor is so important, especially when you're working with these families,
Mm.
especially with the parents. I mean,
A lot of it is deeply emotional, and not that I think I'm the funniest person at all.
are you sure?
No, I try to incorporate humor, sarcasm,
Yeah,
make it light
yeah,
so that they feel comfortable and they're able to be vulnerable with me because at the end of the day, I'm there to help them. I'm not judging you. I'm
yeah,
not perfect myself. I'm on this lifelong learning journey where every day I wake up figuring out what I need to do next.
yeah.
And all of my days look different. I'm always, how would I put it? I'm always met with something new, I would say.
Yeah, but I will say that even just recording this podcast and having the glitch that we recorded a whole episode and then it didn't work. And me, I'm like frantically looking at ChatGPT to support me. And then the way that you handle it with such grace, just speaks to, I guess,
That's
the way,
generous.
no, I mean, and you said, oh, let's just do it again. And I said, no, no, let's wait, let's see. You're like, I'll just do it again. It's no problem. And I'm like, wow,
Actually,
flexibility,
didn't say it's
flexibility.
no problem.
Oh, okay.
You might notice I tried very hard not to respond in that way. I shared with you that the best piece of advice I was given when entering this field was not to say no problem as a response because it knocks down a boundary between you and that person. And when you knock down a boundary, it's hard to rebuild it because they have already made that connection to you and understanding. So,
You know which other one I don't know if you use, but I don't like very much? No problem is fine with me, but no worries.
yeah, I try not to say either of those,
Okay.
especially to children, because you need to give clear, concise directions. And you're not going to veer from that, especially when it comes to their biological needs being met or anything related to routine.
Right. I can see that because I think a lot of times I say no problem. I think we all do, right? Just to make someone feel better that like, okay, it's okay. But then I realized that actually that is a problem, right? It is not no problem. Like that actually annoyed me? So I guess there's a way to maybe shift the language and still frame it in a kind, loving way, right? And
It's
say,
so hard. It's
you know,
probably
yeah,
something that I've spent the last 8 years working on,
re-
learning
almost
that
a
lesson.
decade.
Yes.
And so now you feel like the boundaries that are set by using this specific language. So no use of no problem, because if you use no problem, they will see that, hey, it's all right. Right.
I
I
can
got away with
continue
it. Yeah, yeah.
I can continue this pattern. And oftentimes you become taken advantage of.
And that could be with the parents too, right? By saying
It
no
can be
problem,
with
they cancel.
anybody.
But then there was another one that you said that you avoid using, right?
Sure. I try to reframe the language and say, thank you for letting me know. However, next time and fill in the
Oh,
blank.
so it's interesting because I said, like, we're always on the go, the two of us, but I always, like, especially when I'm in a rush and someone informs me of something going on, I say, thank you for letting me know. However, sometimes I need to be more specific because I'm saying thank you for letting me know. However, the situation
Yeah, but
is
you're
more
being canceled on or you're
yeah, exactly. So, or being canceled on, or
missing something.
they're missing something, or they're giving me information and I don't necessarily like. Recently someone gave me information about someone I work with and I didn't agree necessarily with the approach. And so I said, thank you for letting me know. And then I figured I'll address it later. But when is later, right? Especially when our time is,
Limited
yeah.
and filled. I think, especially with children, and with peer interactions, it's so essential that you, as a teacher or grown up in their life, demonstrate how to engage appropriately and actually react when things are unkind or things are not a reflection of your home or community that you're in. And we do in my class, let's check in.
Hmm.
I think the word sorry is overused,
Ah,
especially when
yeah.
with young children who just use it as a pivot, move on, get away with
Right.
it. What is the sorry? What are you sorry for? Do you even understand sorry? I think as an adult, we're over sorrying.
Oh, yes.
So much
Yeah.
apology,
Oh, yeah.
apology, sorry.
Yeah.
You bang into something,
Right. Oh
sorry.
my gosh. I catch myself sometimes
I'm
saying sorry.
banging into a
Like
table saying
someone
sorry.
bumps into me, I accidentally say I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Like what?
I
Why am I apologizing?
There's a lot of over sorrying,
Yes.
and we often move sorry to reflection. So reflection is hard when you're little, which I understand.
So you have to learn it,
You
right?
have to learn how to reflect. As someone who finds reflecting hard in certain moments, certain scenarios, thinking back, thinking critically, thinking in reality, all of those things are hard.
Yeah.
But in the moment, especially with children,
Yeah.
checking in, helping them verbalize what they did, what they could do differently next time. Can you write a letter to your friend?
I'll
What
do
does
that.
that look like?
Yeah.
Can I help you write it? Can you draw the picture and I'll describe it to them? You just can't continue making undesirable choices with no consequence. And
Yeah.
I think
That happens so easily though. Even in the school setting, like even now I'm in the school setting again, and I find that individuals will come to me, children or adolescents, and they'll say, "Oh, I feel so bad." I said, "What happened?" "I just feel bad that this is what happened with my friend." I said, "Okay, so what are you gonna do?" "Okay, I'm sorry." And then I say, "Wait a second. No, 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 right? There's more to it. Why are you sorry? Are you sorry because you feel bad? Or are you sorry because maybe this isn't the right thing to do? Why isn't it the right thing to do? Why, let's learn from this." And I think the letter thing is really important, right? Where they can actually formulate a letter, put into writing what exactly is
there
wrong
needs to be
rather than
meaning
I'm
behind
sorry.
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because everyone is told, say I'm sorry, say I'm sorry. And now as adults, we're left saying sorry all the time, right?
I try to send to a lot of my friends, don't apologize to me. It's not something apology worthy. When something is worth apologizing for, let's
Right, but
be real about
also
the
if you're gonna
apology.
apologize for something,
Want it
maybe
to
make
be
it
genuine.
specific, right? Maybe
Yes.
explain like why are you sorry, you know?
Yes.
And I think that's also missing, unfortunately, in society now with everything being so short. Even the Gen Zers using all these abbreviations. I don't
I
know,
don't know any of
DMC,
this.
deep meaningful I just learned the other day DMC, deep meaningful conversation.
I
For all the
never
Gen
heard
Zers
that.
listening, I'm sorry. I'm still learning. So
I want to quickly go back
yeah,
to
sorry.
acronyms
Look
so
at
that
me
I
going
can
off
make
topic.
sure
Yeah.
that parents understand it. So I'll just quickly review. After acknowledging the feeling or need, you communicate the limit. And then the T stands for targeting an alternative. So you, as a parent or a grown up caregiver, provide a safe alternative by literally saying, you can do this instead. So by doing this, you're validating first, you're validating the feelings, you're setting a limit stated as a fact rather than you having an emotional response. Rather than you as an adult reacting, you're stating a fact. And I think that part is critical to understanding because often in the moment, especially something's being thrown, you're being hit, something physical, your automatic reaction isn't necessarily going to be calm. And for me, I try my absolute best and I'm far from perfect. I am always trying to stay regulated, but as I am human, I do
Yes.
become dysregulated.
What does
And
that look like to always be regulated? I'd like
it's,
to know.
I would say professionally, I do a better job
Yeah.
than in my
But even so,
outside world.
with everything going on though, professionally, it's hard. It's hard to always feel regulated. And you mentioned something before about restarting is also good.
I often share with friends and friends in my class and friends in life that sometimes I just need a minute. And oftentimes that looks like me verbally saying, I'm going to go for a walk. I need a minute to breathe. I'm going to leave the room and come back in and start over. And I often give children that opportunity, especially after witnessing undesirable behavior
Okay,
and reframing that.
I'm not going to ask you to dig deeper into the undesirable. Okay.
Yes. Basically, the overarching goal by using this strategy, ACT, is to support children's emotional selves and emotions in the moment while setting a boundary. And we talk a lot about consistency. And when you're not consistent, you lose credibility with your children. And I think a lot of parents don't want to face the reality of that.
Yeah.
And the credibility piece is so important.
So the only way to have credibility or maintain this credibility is to make sure that you are following through and that whatever you're doing on a consistent basis.
Yes.
Otherwise,
And not only a consistent basis, making sure that everyone be on the same page
oh,
about
yes.
language and
Okay.
strategies. It's so important for children to see that everyone's communicating. I did want to mention a lot of times I see it where maybe a child did something during the day and then they're having this nervousness that they're going to go home and
Uh,
hear about it
yes. Yes.
automatically,
I've seen that.
or maybe a babysitter is going to share with the parent right when they come home
Hmm.
what they did that was not great during the day. I think that there's ways that someone can communicate to a parent during the day or after so that the child doesn't have so much anxiety and fear about how their parent might react to undesirable behavior. And that's really hard for everyone involved.
It's so interesting because that happens so often where I have students who come to me and say, I'm in trouble, I'm in big trouble. I said, wait a second, what are you talking about? Turns out that someone said that they're going to call the parent later. And so that's so hard because they spend literally the next however many hours just in agony. And the
Yes.
truth, it can be, like you said, confronted. You're not saying that the parent shouldn't deal with this, right? But what's the point of setting it up for another many hours, right?
And I try to address things in the moment. And I think it's critical for children to see that there's communication between adults in your life, but it's also tricky.
Yeah, it's a tough balance to try.
It is. And it's something I definitely struggle with and I'm working on because I want children to see communication in a way and have parents react appropriately. And sometimes I just need to teach parents how to react appropriately to their children. And that's learned.
Yes, it takes time. It takes a lot of time. So, before you go, first of all, you did mention something earlier about body double.
Yes, I wanted to.
Yeah, and I just wanted you to address that a bit because when I heard about it, it reminded me of like when somebody's on the cast of something and they have a body double because for moments where they can't be there, they have someone that like their body similar, the posture similar. That's not what body doubling is, obviously, as it pertains to you trying to deal and navigate with life with ADHD.
Yes. I hadn't even heard of this theme or expression until my diagnosis or learning about it. And it gave a name to something that I struggled to do for so long. And this is approaching tasks that I find undesirable. So I'm saying putting my laundry away or small things in my home,
I can't even get
which
the laundry in. Okay, let alone putting it away.
so, as I've tried to approach putting laundry away by calling a friend or distracting myself with a friend there to actually complete the task, it's been so beneficial where
Uh,
it might have taken me an hour and a half to put laundry away. Now I separate into
no,
piles. Say, for example, you put the pants away, you do this, this, and this. You can reward yourself with something and then you return to it and I give myself 30 minutes and I set an alarm and I try to hold myself accountable and I give praise to myself because we all need that.
yeah, I mean, you're basically doing what you do for the kids, right? You're having an instant reward waiting for you when you complete it. You're also not setting the expectation too high, and you're using a compensatory strategy, which is having someone with you, body doubling. And I have a friend who undiagnosed ADHD. She may have it, she may not. I'm not a neuropsych, don't want to get in trouble, but I was always so curious as to why every time she would invite us over for dinner, she would start to clean. And she said, "No, I want you to come here early because that way I can get started on things." So it seemed like it was very challenging for her without the body double or body triple. So sometimes it was like four of us sitting there. Yeah. As
Sometimes
she
it
cleaned.
just takes one person to encourage or nudge you.
Yeah.
And
Motivate
I
you.
see this with children a lot where in a whole group setting, they're not motivated to complete the task. But if you sit down with them and say,
Mm,
I know you're completely capable of doing this.
yeah.
I'll just sit next to you and I don't even talk
Yeah.
and they complete the task. And sometimes that's all it takes, just a
Right. Safe space.
safe space,
Yeah.
a safe
Yeah.
person who you trust
Right.
to help you and just being there.
Okay.
A little comment here, a little comment there. Look how you're doing this. You must be so proud of yourself. Look how you are completing this task now that we actually began. And I really just want children to have this autonomy and awareness and love of themselves, because when you learn that at a young age, it carries through. And when you learn it as a later in life adult,
It's much harder.
yes,
Yeah, so as autonomy, independence, but interdependence because you're still gonna have body doubles, right? And then also obviously self-advocacy ultimately, right? That's the goal with the parents and you by the side. So, is there a message that you would like to offer everyone listening from one professional to another, from one professional to a parent, from one professional to a teen and tween who may or may not be neurodivergent? What's your message or key point that you want to leave off as a point of impact?
sure. I would say, as a grand finale, give yourself grace. As a self critical woman navigating many spaces per day, I forget often to give myself grace. And I just wish more parents would end the day, be grateful for everything you have, even if it's challenging, because someone else wants what you have.
Good point.
It's hard to put that in perspective in this society of wanting more and comparing, and just embrace your challenges of day to day life. Lean on the people who want to support you, like me, and use your community, use your resources.
Community, that's a big one. That's very important. People underestimate that. Yeah.
Community is so important, and advocate for yourself, advocate for your children, lean on people who want to help you, find trusting, supportive people in your life, because it's a team approach. A lot of the time, you can't do it by yourself. I lean on people. I'm very lucky. I have a village, and because of
I like
that,
the way you said that. Village.
I do.
Talk about decoding. Village. Okay. And
Yes.
blending. Yeah.
I have a village, which I'm so grateful for. And I hope to expand my village by helping others in the years to come.
Well, speaking on that note, where can everybody find you? I'll put it obviously in the description of the episode, but just
My website, you can look on Google, Coachable Change LLC. You
Instagram.
can find me on Instagram, coachable_change, and find me through Shoshana, find me on LinkedIn.
Wait, but also you also are part of
Yes,
Empowerment Life Skills Coach,
I'm
right?
also part of the team, Empowerment Life Skills Coaching. And there's a lot of individuals with a wide skill set who would be happy to support you as well. So I
That's
hope.
great. Jill, I can't thank you enough, not just for recording with me once, but twice.
My pleasure.
And also just for being here, being so thoughtful, just kind of really intentional with your words and really, really speaking to so many people who are struggling and making it clear that everybody is different and every family is different. But ultimately, your goal is, and the parent coaching goal is to really just support the parent, and people shouldn't be afraid to ask for help. People should understand that that's actually a good thing to ask for help rather than shy away from it. But yeah, keep doing the good work that you're doing.
You too.
Alrighty.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.